Hi guys, this is David for Lonesome Dog Studios. Today I'm going to be showing you how to spice up your 4-chord pop progressions. Let's go. I'm going to show you 3 levels of things today, starting with a beginner kind of thing to do, moving up to an intermediate, and then a more advanced technique just to make your 4-chord progressions sound a bit better. One thing to note about this is it can change what these chords mean. You know, your song might sound quite different if you add these notes in what I'm going to suggest to you. So just be wary. It might not be what you want. You might want to keep it relatively simple, but it's just for some ideas. If you're thinking about expanding your piano playing, if you want to get your chords sounding a bit more advanced, then here are a few tips to get you on that path. So number one, the first thing I'm going to look at is just extending your chords. So moving away from your standard 3-note chords, your triads that I'm sure you all know how to play. So on the keys, the progression we're going to use is one that is very standard. It's good to keep it easy. You can see as we add notes, you'll understand what the basic is and then what we're adding on top of that. So the progression is just this. Which I'm sure you've all heard a million times. It's been used in every song ever, pretty much. We're just going to make it a little bit more interesting. First of all, by just adding some extra notes in. Now, the notes I'm going to add are going to take it kind of in a bit more jazzy direction. So just be wary if that's not the sound that you're going for. You might want to not use these notes and maybe stick to your basic 4 chords. So we're going to add in the 7th to start with, which obviously is just in the degree of the scale is the 7th note. So you can just count up to find that. So for C, we're looking at the B on top here. And that gives us a chord that sounds like this. We're then going to move down to the A minor, but then add a 7 again. It's a minor 7, so we're going to add the G on top there, which sounds like this. Then this F, again, same thing, add the 7 as well. And then for now, we're just going to keep the 5, this G chord, standard. But you can hear just how that slightly elevated it. Very simple step, but can change the whole feeling of those chords, I think. So if we just play those through again, it sounds like this. Personally for me, I think the thing that makes the big difference there is the last 2 chords. You can hear going from this kind of F major 7 sound. It feels nice and everything's kind of moving in the right direction. And that's going to be the next tip that we're going to get onto, which is making sure all of your voices are leading nicely into each other. There's a few ways we can do that. I'll use these last two chords as an example first of all. So the reason I think it works so well, we're playing obviously F, A, C, E in our right hand here. We've got the F down below as well. All the notes feel like they're resolving. So F's moving to that G. This is moving to that B. This is moving up or down. This is moving down. You know, everything's kind of moving one step to the next note. So it feels like everything's moving in a natural direction. So making sure all of your voices in your chord are moving correctly. If you don't know what voices are, just think of them as each of your finger being a voice. So they all want to kind of move nicely with each other. So in that example, you can see everything's moving nicely there. Now the first 2 chords, they don't really work as they are. It's quite stark, the difference between the 2. We're moving from this C major 7 in root position down to this A minor 7 in root position. Just a bit jumpy. Everything's kind of moving very blocky in a way. The way we can fix that is by inverting the chords, so moving the notes round in the chord. What I'm also going to do is omit some notes, so we're not going to play some notes as well. When you're playing these kind of chords, when you start adding in 7ths and 9ths and your further extensions, 11ths and 13ths and whatnot, you don't necessarily need to play the root and 5th all the time. The information of the chord is in your 3rd and 7th. So for example, in this C major, these are our 2 main notes. So we could infer what the chord is saying to us just by playing these 2 notes. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this chord from here down to here. So a much nicer voicing personally, I think. And we're missing out the C in the right hand. So C in the bass, and then just this simple B, E, G sound in the right hand. And then that's just going to lead much nicer than before into this A minor 7 sound. And the reason that works is because we're keeping 2 notes the same here. So our G and E up the top here, we're going to keep those the same because they're in both the chords. So you can see they're sitting at the top there. And the voice leading at the bottom is nice. So moving that B down there works a bit nicer because we're keeping this E and G on the top, which is also common in this A minor 7 chord. You see we're keeping this E and G on the top. So that's a nice way to move between the chords. And then this B on the bottom of the right hand that we have here, this B right here, you know, can resolve upwards to this C, or it can resolve down to this A here. You know, so it's just thinking about how your voices are moving. One good rule of thumb for this kind of thing is making sure that all of your voices are trying to move as little as possible. So if you're thinking about moving to a next chord, think about how you can invert that chord to just make it fit better. That tends to be a good rule of thumb. It might work sometimes, it might not, but one big thing to take away from these lessons, I think, is experimentation. Just try stuff out. Okay, cool. So that gives us this so far. This is our progression now. So we've still got the essence of it, you know, we're still sticking to our basic 4 chords. There is another step we can do in this level 2.5, is just to maybe make that F feel a bit better, because now we're jumping from this A minor 7 down to this F. It's okay, I don't hate it, but there is more we can do with it. So for example, we can just extend it. So instead of playing just F major 7 in root position, we might want to look at this kind of sound, which is F major 9, just in voice slightly different. And I think that will lead a bit better, again, because we've got this E and G on the top. So that sounds like this if we use that inversion. So again, flowing a bit better, everything's kind of voice leading nicely, everything's moving how we want it to move. Now the only thing is this last chord, the G, that isn't really fitting. And that's where level 3 comes in. So level 3 is probably the biggest jump. We're going to move quite far away from the original sound. So, you know, if you're liking what we just played there and that's close to what you want, then, you know, you don't necessarily need to go to this next step. But, you know, if you listen to that and you're thinking, all right, 4 chord progression, yeah, it sounds a bit more interesting, but I'd like to make it sound, you know, more jazzy. I want to use it in a different genre. Then we can start substituting chords. We can start taking chords out. Now we're going to do this in a slightly different way. We're not going to do like for like substitutions. And what I mean by that is chords that have the exact same function in the progression. We're going to change the progression effectively is what we're going to do here. Instead of going from our 1 chord, the C here, to minor 6, then 4, then 5, we're going to take out the 4 and put in the minor 2nd. Chords are quite similar. They kind of function the same. You'll hear how it sounds like. It's still similar to the progression, but slightly different. So that will sound like this. And we'll just play a normal G for now. So just a bit more interesting, way more kind of standard jazz. You'll hear this in loads of jazz standards if you listen to those kind of things. But again, just takes it to a different place. You know, we're now not in pop 4 chord progression really, but we're now way more jazzy. And to take this to the next level, so maybe level 3.5, a step further than that, we're going to really think about our voice leading. We're going to change all of the inversions. We're going to add in more extensions from level 1. So instead of just using the 7th, we're going to think about the 9th as well now. And we're also going to change our final chord, which is the dominant chord, which is this G, the chord that brings us back round. We're going to alter that. So we're going to add in some extensions and we're going to alter those extensions. So the chord I want to change, we're going to move away from this very basic C major 7 kind of sound. We'll go to this kind of C major 9, bit brighter, a few more notes added at the top. And this position of your hands where your left hand is playing the root, the 5th and the 9th, very common. It's good to get this feeling into your fingers because you'll use it all the time, especially if you're just trying to, you know, if someone's just asked you to play some music over something. So we'll go from this C major 9 sound here down to this A minor 9 sound. So it's a bit clunkier because we are just moving everything from there down, but I think it gets hidden by the extra notes, really. We don't necessarily need to worry about voice leading. Of course, everything is voice leading, but our fingers are just moving position there. And then we're going to the minor 2 now, which is going to be this D sound. But again, D minor 9, standard position. Effectively, I've just moved my fingers around 3 times to different chords. You know, much more advanced sound now, a much different sound than what we had previous. So now we're here. And how do we get back to the C? We're going to go via the G, but not just a standard G or G7. We're going to do this. And then back in. So really, really simple. I'll explain it a little bit. You don't necessarily need to know the theory of how it works, but you can hear how we're kind of holding the sound off to then resolve a little bit later. So before, we would have had this kind of sound. You know, then straight back in. This time, we're just delaying that resolution a little bit. So we're going from this D minor 9 to this, you know, G13 sound, sus, G13 sus sound, and then resolving with this altered G13 sound with a flat 9 there, and then back to. So when you think where we've come from, we're still in the same realm. Yeah, we're quite far away, But, you know, we've done 3 things here. We've substituted out some chords, we've added some notes to those chords, and we've changed our voicings to make everything sound a bit better. So here's where we were. And here's where we've ended up. So 3 very simple tips. Apply this to anything. Think about how you can add notes in, give it a try, experiment, have fun with it. Great, thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. And we'll catch you in the next one.